Hey sis, happy Friday and welcome to your short and sweet. This week we're talking about value, and I wanted to share in a little bit more depth about what I referred to in our podcast this past week. And that is podcast 15, and it's called Remembering Your Value. As I shared the story in that podcast of my sister, I mentioned that my grandmother was an avid crocheter, and that my grandmother spent many hours as a girl. She learned to crochet, and she spent many hours perfecting that art, and she could create these amazing doilies. She would crochet washcloths. There's a washcloth just behind me that one of my sisters made, and I thought it was so beautiful I didn't want to use it as a washcloth, so I hung it in my office. But she would create doilies, she would create afghans, blankets, all different things, and even some clothing items, which were booties that I referred to in my story. Those were the things that I remember her making. I don't really remember her crocheting scarves or hats, but she did crochet the baby booties. And then she also crocheted each of us grandkids our own personal afghan. She allowed us to choose our favorite pattern. She allowed us to choose the colors that we wanted it to be. And it's one of my prized possessions. I love it. And it reminds me of her and the many hours that she would sit visiting with us while her hands were moving to crochet. Now, before she died, she created, I would say, a stockpile, but it wasn't hundreds of baby blankets, but there were several baby blankets that she had crocheted. The idea behind that is that she had several grandkids, and as each of the grandkids had their own babies, she wanted each of them to be able to choose. She wanted them to have what we call like a christening or baby blanket that was all white, and it's got beautiful scalloped edging that she did. And then on top of that, she gifted each of the grandkids another blanket. And like I mentioned before, my grandmother passed away a year after Paul and I got married. She did make it to our wedding, but she did not make it past our 1-year anniversary. And we didn't have our first child for 3 years after we were married. And so by the time it was my turn to start our family and having babies, the tradition of the blessing, christening blanket, and the baby blanket and the baby booties had started, but there wasn't anyone necessarily to keep the tradition going and alive. Now my sisters, Leanne and Denise is an avid cross stitcher, but she can also crochet. She's very talented, and she's a quilter, and she's just very, very gifted. And Leanne is very talented at crocheting, and she's an avid reader, and she is amazing. And the most special thing for me was that as I welcomed our first baby into our family, I had my grandmother's christening blanket because she had made those prior to her passing. And each of us kids that had not had children yet were allowed to choose one other baby afghan. The funny thing is I fell in love with this pink afghan that she made. It's got a little bit of sparkle in it. It's just beautiful. I love the pattern. I loved everything about it. And so I chose this pink baby blanket, this pink baby Afghan. And I've never used it. I've had all boys. And so it has sat in the closet for a long, long time, about 19 years actually. And so, we had our first baby christened and blessed, and he wore his white christening outfit, and we had the white christening baby blanket that she made with the scalloped edges that were so beautiful. And my sister came to visit, and she brought with her in a special gift bag baby booties that she spent time looking at the booties that my grandmother had made for her, and spent hours figuring out how to create them for me. For her, it was a special time. She will say to this day that she doesn't know how she did it. And to me, it's a miracle that I have baby booties exactly like my two sisters do, because my sister loved me and cared enough about me to try something that she had never done before. And I value those baby booties. I still have them, and I always will. And I value my washcloth that my sister made for me. I value these things because, for one, I can't make them myself. And it's their hands and their love and their fingers that go into creating each of these items. And that is something that I cannot replace, is them. So sis, whether it's baby booties, a special letter, whatever it may be, I want you to find those things that bring value to your life. And it's not a monetary thing. The things that we value are most often priceless. And that's the same as you. Sis, you are priceless. And it's important that you start putting that priceless value on yourself, because you can't be recreated. And that is a gift that you give to this world. You've got this, sis.